Hello and welcome back to the Mastering the Marketplace series where we're focusing on SaaS offers. This is David Starr, and in this module we're going to talk about the requirement for a webhook in a SaaS marketplace offer and learn about how they work and why we want one. Firstly, what is the SaaS endpoint? Some endpoint somewhere on the internet that will receive post events from the Microsoft Marketplace. The webhook is alerted when things about a specific subscription change. For example, if a customer cancels their service, the webhook gets called with a post payload. Now, usually you'll want to keep a management system for your subscriptions, or at least a record of what happens to a subscription over time. And this webhook provides the information you need to keep such a system up to date. And just like the URL on the landing page, the URL to the notification endpoint is configured in the technical configuration section of Partner Center. And that's just what we see here. This is the technical configuration section of a SaaS offer in Partner Center. And if this isn't self-evident, this is where you put the URL to your webhook. What sort of events can you expect to be notified about? Firstly, webhook post events occur when changes are made to subscriptions on your offers, and the events that occur depend on the state of the subscription. So for example, a subscription might be in a subscribed state, or a suspended state, or in one of these two states, pending fulfillment, start, or unsubscribed. Now let's start over on the subscribed state. If we happen to be in that state with a subscription, we can receive several types of events, all of which are documented along with the SaaS API and Microsoft Docs. Just search for SaaS Offer Webhook. But for example, we can see that if a subscription is in a subscribed state, the customer can request a change in the quantity of seats they are licensing. This action by the customer results in a call to the webhook. It wouldn't likely make sense for them to be able to do that in a suspended state. So what can we do in a suspended state? Why might a subscription be suspended, for example? Well, imagine that the credit card used to pay for the service is no longer valid at the time of monthly billing. The service may get suspended. And then the customer corrects this issue. The suspended subscription gets reinstated. And the webhook is notified of this so that perhaps the publisher can reopen service to the customer. And finally, in these last two states, no webhook events will be posted. The pending fulfillment start state of a subscription means that it's waiting for the publisher to activate it. There's no webhook event to send. And when a subscription is in the unsubscribed state, its life cycle is effectively over. No more actions may be performed on the subscription, and no more webhook events will be posted about that subscription. Let's take a look at the common flow of a webhook implementation. What exactly does your webhook function do? As we've said, at first it starts with some change in an event on a subscription in the Azure Marketplace. From there, a call is made from the marketplace to the publisher's webhook, passing a JSON payload in the body of the request. Now it's up to the publisher's webhook to validate the security of that call, which we'll get into in a future module. From there, we typically return a 200 back to the Microsoft Marketplace, letting it know that their request has been handled successfully. And one more thing we might want to do, though, is verify the notifications payload. For example, if you've had an unsubscribe event come in, you may want to go pull from the Microsoft Marketplace APIs that subscription and check that its status is indeed unsubscribed. The publisher's webhook will act on that notification by alerting some back-end publisher service, which can do any number of things. And we'll take a look at some proposed ones now. There are many architectures one can imagine when using a SaaS offer webhook. And so this is a potential scenario. It's not meant to be a best practice. It's meant to get you to think about how you might use your webhook in a production scenario. Now, in earlier modules, we talked about manual fulfillment scenarios. We're going to model one of those here. This means that some work has to be done by a human being in order to create a new customer account for a SaaS subscription. Now, of course, we start with the Azure Marketplace. And again, it posts some message to that webhook endpoint. Now, in this case, that's represented as an Azure function. Now, it might be that that webhook endpoint simply writes the JSON into something like Azure Cosmos DB, a very JSON-friendly database, and then returns 200 back to the Azure Marketplace, indicating that the operation is complete. From there, the publisher may well build a publisher portal. This would be an internal system that reads from that database and is used to manage subscriptions. Now, it will need to talk back to the Azure Marketplace, and in doing so, it could use the REST SaaS APIs, or it could use the SaaS client libraries. It's much easier to read and write from the Azure Marketplace using those read and write capabilities of the client libraries. An example of one action you might want to perform is that once the work has been done of manually creating the tenant in the SaaS solution, then with your publisher portal, you go ahead and activate that subscription. Here's another potential architecture, this one for automated fulfillment scenarios. An automated fulfillment scenario is one in which there's no human interaction needed to provision the user's account. That's going to be done by an automated process. And remember, as we look at this model, it's only one of numerous models that we might use to automatically provision accounts for customers when they subscribe to your offer. Again, we start with the Azure Marketplace, we send that post to our webhook, but in this case, we write that JSON into a queue, returning the 202 message back to the Azure Marketplace, which says we've accepted the post and the operation is going to be long running and will eventually complete. We have an automated account creation process running in the background that might get triggered or that might pull the queue, but it's going to read that JSON payload off of that queue and take according action. In one case, it might create a subscription database. So it will put information about our subscriptions into a data store from which we can read with our publisher portal, again giving us the ability to talk to the Azure Marketplace to do things like activate and deactivate accounts. In addition, the automated account creation process would likely also create a new customer tenant within the SaaS application. And at this point, something may occur like sending an email to the new customer, letting them know that the subscription to their new product is up and running. You would also want to send from your automated account creation process and activate notification back to the Azure Marketplace so that billing begins at the moment that you configure that tenant account. Let's take a look at some details about webhook events. Firstly, if you receive a webhook event that has a status of succeeded in its JSON, then we know that this event is for informational purposes only. That is to say that the publisher is not going to be able to update them. So for example, you couldn't say that this operation has failed. The operation has in fact already succeeded, like an unsubscribe event, for example. Alternatively, we can take a look at the action field of a given payload, and we can look for actions of change plan, change quantity, or reinstate. A status in this case will arrive as in progress, giving you as the publisher the opportunity to approve or deny the action before it finishes completion. One big thing to remember: SaaS webhooks may be implemented in any language, on any stack and hosted anywhere as a public HTTPS endpoint. Now, certainly we hope you use Azure to host your workloads, but there's nothing that says you need to do so in order to host your webhook. Deeper technical information is available on webhooks in the next 2 modules of this course: implementing a SaaS offer webhook in .NET and securing a SaaS offer webhook in .NET. Now, while the code is presented in these modules in .NET, it's presented in such a way as to be very applicable to solutions on any language stack. So join me for those 2 modules, regardless of what language or stack you work in. You can find more information, including more videos, sample code, and PDFs of the slides at aka.ms/masteringthemarketplace.